College Game Day's Rece Davis and college sports reporter Heather Dinich joining us now with much more on this breaking Big Ten news story. Rece, there's a celebration here, and football is back in this conference. But considering we have seen conferences that are playing now be forced to cancel or postpone games due to positive tests, the lack of practice time or lack of depth, what's been the reaction around the Big Ten on playing 8 games here in 8 weeks?
Relief for the most part, Kevin. I mean, these players and coaches want to play. They understand the challenge that's in front of them. And I think for the most part, most of the programs have done a really good job in the protocol that they've had up to this point. And I would imagine that they'll be very diligent in following this enhanced protocol that the Big Ten sets out. Now, coaches worry about everything. So they're going to be concerned about, the potential for positive tests. But I think overall, they're looking at the alternative. It's either do it like this or don't get to play at all, and they're eager to take this opportunity.
And Rece, I'll add to that because Dr. Jim Borchers at Ohio State, who was one of the leading voices in getting these teams back on the field from the medical perspective, talked today about how the ability to test them every single day, almost 100%, eliminates the infectiousness from practices and games. So he said you can never eliminate it 100%, but we feel like we've gotten to the point where we are as risk-free as we can be in terms of the virus. So that, in theory, if it works, should help them get through those 8 games in 8 weeks.
Okay, as we wait for the schedule release, the much-anticipated second schedule release, the end of the Big Ten season, it lines up one day before playoff selection day. Heather, you're plugged into the committee's thought process here. How will they approach the Big Ten's re-entry here?
Well, I spoke with CFP Executive Director Bill Hancock earlier today, and it is clear that the selection committee is once again going to have to deal with uneven scheduling. But we also talked about how the CFP has yet to determine any benchmark to qualify for the college football playoff. Can the Big Ten get in this thing with only 8 games? Well, let's ask the question, what if Clemson only plays 5 games? Can Clemson qualify for a semifinal spot? Can Alabama get in it if their only games are 7 games and they're disrupted by the virus? So those benchmarks haven't been set. Bill Hancock told me it's too early. We're going to let these scenarios unfold and see what happens, but it's certainly going to be tough for the committee to decide this, so the protocol hasn't changed.
I'm not sure that they will ever set a benchmark because, in theory, that could set an incentive, although the Big Ten stringent 5% positivity rate would affect this. But if they set a benchmark, then you either create an incentive for a team to play when perhaps it shouldn't, or not to play when it should. If they're in a situation where maybe, it wouldn't be advantageous to play. Now, I'm talking more about perception. I generally believe the best about people and believe that they're honorable intentions and don't believe that they would game the system. But I think the benchmark could create that perception. I think they'd like to avoid that. I think common sense would tell you that if a team only plays 3 games, no matter how good they look, they probably aren't going to be included. But, if it's a representative, reasonable number of games, I think that those teams would be included and the extenuating circumstances taken into consideration.
Understood on some minimum benchmarks and also the flexibility here from the committee and the criteria. This leaves the Pac-12 as the only Power 5 conference with no current plan to play. Commissioner Larry Scott, he released this statement today saying, quote, "At this time, our universities in California and Oregon do not have approval from state or local public health officials to start contact practice. We are hopeful that our new daily testing capability can help satisfy public health officials' approvals in California and Oregon to begin contact practice and competition." They're also on the West Coast dealing with the wildfires and air quality conditions. Rece, where does the Pac-12 go from here after this storyline coming out from the Big Ten?
Well, the other things you just outlined are a really big deal. And talking to Larry Scott a few days ago when they got their daily testing protocol, he said it was preferable but not imperative to follow the Big Ten to follow their leader for them to work in conjunction. But I'm sure, if at all possible, the Pac-12 would like to be able to start. And it seems that maybe the governor in California has clarified some things that might make it easier for teams to start practice. So I'm sure they would like to be able to do it, if at all possible, to get started maybe along the time the Big 12, the Big 10 does. But they had said earlier that November was their best case scenario.
That's right. A source in the Pac-12 familiar with those discussions told me that mid to late November is currently their most aggressive return plan because of those things you mentioned with the public health concerns. But as soon as they are cleared to practice and hit each other, you better believe those presidents and chancellors in the Pac-12 are going to reconvene and vote again.
Okay, we will, of course, watch this story as it continues to develop and much more with Rece and Heather, of course, on College Game Day on the road at Louisville on Saturday. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.